No, 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 Beals. Really? Hello. How are you guys? I hope you're doing great. I'm at home, sheltered, just like you are. But it's not too bad, it's not too bad. I'm with my family and we're safe. Anyways, this is Rails. I told you about her. She's just as cute as you remember. And I just wanted to share with you how cute she is. Look at that. She's so cute. Anyways, let's get to class. Let's get to work, shall we? All right, so in the first class, we looked at Mondrian's Broadway Boogie Woogie. And by now, I should tell you that we're going to be looking at abstraction. We're going to be studying abstract images. We're going to approach this notion of abstract images. So this painting served as an introduction to what an abstract painting is. And like we said, it is a painting that captures the energy of New York with simple abstract elements. So here I have a series of pictures by Mondrian from some of his earlier work to some of his later work. As you can see, the first picture is a figurative painting of a tree in a kind of landscape, and then he moves on to simplify and to abstract his pictures even more so as he moves along. Like I said, we're going to be studying abstraction, so these are some of the questions that we should be able to answer by the end of the term. Take a good look at them, think about them. If you have any questions, let me know on the chat, but simply consider them and then move on to our next slide. So here we have a series of figurative works by several artists throughout our history. And like you can see, we have portraits, landscapes, history paintings, and still lifes. And what's common about these pictures is that they communicate information by painting figures, okay? So all of the things that you see in the picture are objects that are recognizable because they are depicted in a figurative way. By contrast, we have a series of pictures that communicate information in a different way. They simply have shapes that are arranged in a certain way and they communicate some type of idea or information. Consider them, look at them, try to think what is each picture telling me and with what kind of shape or arrangement. Okay, so I selected this logo from our previous slide. This picture, this logo from Banco de Occidente, I like it a lot because it's a logo that conveys or communicates this idea of security. And it does so by having two shapes that are interlocked. They're like a chain link. They're permanently together. You cannot untie them, they're locked. And so this idea of security is very important because that is what a bank does. You give them money and they have it safely storaged. Okay, so the bank is telling the customer that their money is safe. All right, now quick questions to all of you soccer lovers. Here we have the Adidas logo. And if I would ask you what and how is Adidas communicating with this image or this logo, what would you say it is? What would be the keyword? Let me know on the chat. All right, let's get to the exercise now. So today you're going to be making a picture that communicates or conveys the concept of stability. Here I have a couple of examples of how to communicate this idea with simple abstract shapes. And your task is to come up with a picture that communicates stability. Continue watching the video for further instructions, but more importantly, do not use figures. These are the materials that you need for today's class. Scissors, piece of paper, ruler, some kind of glue, a pencil, and then a paper that is a different color from the white paper. If you don't have any black cardboard, which you could use ideally, you can use some other colored paper. Okay guys, so starting with a piece of paper, I want to maybe start thinking about some kind of shapes that communicate stability. So if you look for instance at a pyramid is a very stable construction and it has a kind of triangular profile or shape. So for instance, if I draw a triangle right here and I cut it, maybe I can start having a shape which I can use to communicate stability. Now another shape that can communicate stability, for instance, is a square. So a building does that, right? The buildings are very robust and they have to be stable, otherwise they'll fall, and that's no fun for anyone. So a square is a good example of a shape that can communicate stability. So if you're thinking about something that can be as stable as a building, you can also think about a kind of flat rectangle. So maybe these two shapes can help us communicate stability. So I'm gonna cut this one. So here I'm going to start playing with them to see how I can communicate the opposite, which is instability. So for instance, if I do something like this, you can see that there's a suggestion that the things are falling down. But for instance, if I move it to something like this, it is very robust and it's not going to communicate instability, but it's actually going to communicate stability. Okay, so another example would be maybe something like this. So you have this one, which is very stable right there. And then you have this one, which could be like here. And then you can have this one on the top. Just like that. And that's going to communicate a more of a stable construction. So yeah, that one's nice. Even that's a little better. You see the fact that this thing is actually touching this one helps the construction feel a little bit more stable. So you see we have three very basic shapes and we have several ways of arranging them. That's only a couple of examples of the things that you can do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually make them in our final form.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to start with a square piece of paper. Here's where I'm going to lay down all the pieces of black cardboard that I'm going to use. I want to start with a square piece of paper because that in itself is a very stable shape and that may help me convey this idea. So I have this, and now I have some black paper which I'm going to cut out right now. Okay, so maybe this one is also a very stable arrangement. So here I have a few shapes that I pre-cut that I may be able to use for a few more arrangements. I have some triangles, some cut-out triangles, this type of sort of base type of looking shape, and then I also have this one. So I started out with this one because I think it's a very robust, big, tough shape, and it takes almost all of the space, which I like, because it does give a sense of mass and volume. So maybe we can start with something like this, right? And then maybe you can bring in this shape. Let's see if I can do something here. Alright, so maybe this one is an interesting one, right? And we'll continue with the theme of not using figures, right? We're only using shapes. This doesn't look like anything in the world. It's simply a square and a elongated, cut-out rectangular shape at the top. So maybe this is one. I have this one, and let's see if I can try and lay it down a different way. So maybe something like this could be interesting. Even if you do something like this, it could also be interesting. Let's see. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so that's a very interesting one, a very stable one. Let's see if I can get another one. So I have a couple of triangles, and I thought maybe if I can align them with these kinds of cuts that I made here, it could make for an interesting one. So even something like this conveys the stability in some way. Yeah, that's it. I mean, these are some examples that you can make before you go with your final shape. So maybe this also conveys some kind of volume and mass that is sitting properly and is very stable. You know, interestingly enough, I really like this one. Interestingly enough, I think, I'm sorry, not this one, but this one. I think out of all of them, this may be the one that conveys stability better. Maybe this I drop it down a little. Okay guys, so for a final figure, I ended up cutting this kind of strange looking shapes. And the final arrangement for this one would be something like this. Now, this is a more complex one because it has more types of shapes, but it is essentially the same exercise. So maybe something like that.
Okay guys, so I'm going to put together our final example, and for that I have 4 pieces that look just like this, and then I have this shape right here. So I'm going to put it together and I'm going to talk about it as I do it. So right here I have a little bit of white glue. If you have glue stick, that's a little better. If you have white glue, make sure to use very little. So this goes like this because we want to create something like this. And then this one goes like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this white glue and I'm going to put it here. Just a little dab, and that should work. Again, if you don't have black cardboard, just use any kind of color paper. The idea is that you can have a white paper and then some other colored paper. If you don't have that, then you can cut out these shapes in white and then color them, or use a Sharpie to make sure they are different and we have some contrast with the white paper. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have this shape here, and I'm going to glue that somewhere around here. So we want to do something like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of paper and I'm going to add a little bit of white glue around it, under it, I'm sorry. Just a little bit, you don't need too much. Okay, so then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to tape it. I'm sorry, glue it to the paper just like this. Okay, so now that we have that, I can come to this piece of shape, to this piece of paper, and add a little bit of glue on the back, just like that. You don't need too much, this should do it. Okay, so perfect, just like that. You don't need too much. And now this one, I want to have it come the opposite way, just like this. So let's do that now. Now the idea behind this particular example is that you have stability not by depending on the weight of the figures, but depending on the force of the figures. It's a little bit more complex, but I'm going to talk about it or explain it a little bit more when it's finished. So a little bit of glue here, just a little bit, and now we come here and I'm gonna have it just like that. Good. If you have some excess, you can go back and get your scissors, which are right here, and you can trim this off and just like that. Same here. You want to make sure that maybe some of these shapes engage with the frame. So this is my final example for you. And what's the idea behind it? The idea is that you have these two shapes going against each other, and they are pressing on this other shape, right? But since they're symmetrical, and this shape also seems to be symmetrical, you have this kind of stability by force because they're both going against it with the same force or the same power. So this will be my last example. And again, there's no figures, there's only shapes, and that's what we're trying to make here. This one also works horizontally, which is pretty interesting. And I thought this would be a more sophisticated example for you to look at. Okay, so again, stability by force as opposed to stability by weight. All right, guys, so here we have the last three examples I made for you. On the left, we have stability by weight, and then on the right, we have stability by force. These are for reference only. This is to give you some examples of some of the things that you can do. But again, try to create your own, try multiple arrangements, and then settle for the one that you think is the best. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm on the chat. We're looking at two examples of student work from last year. Here, both students were trying to convey stability. So these are, again, for reference only. I'm sure you can do better than this, but again, these are very good examples of some of the things that students come up with. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, these are for reference only, but it's a good idea for you to see what you can do in this exercise. All right, just to be clear, by the end of this class, you have to have one drawing that conveys stability. Once you finish it, upload the picture to your class notes. Hey guys, I just wanted to give you a quick announcement for the next class. So next class, we're going to have an evaluation, okay? Now don't worry, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. But we do have to have evaluations. So the evaluation for next class is going to be essentially the same as this class. So this class, I gave you a concept and you communicate that concept in an abstract way, right? That's today's class. When I come in next class, I'm going to give you two concepts and you're going to find a way to make an abstract picture that communicates those two concepts. So for instance, the concept can be speed and it could be, I don't know, light or something. And you're going to have to communicate those two concepts in an abstract way using shapes only. We're going to be using the same materials. We're going to have the same time as today. So try to be ready for it. We have to evaluate. I'm going to try this way for us to have the most amount of time for the evaluation. So next class, when I come in, it's just going to be like you have to come up with a couple of pictures that convey this and that. And I'm going to leave the class class for you to finish. If you have any questions, of course, I'll be there for the evaluation, but make sure to have your materials ready. So color paper, scissors, maybe pencils or something like that. But that's it. Just be ready. It's going to be okay, but we have to do it. We have to do it. Okay. Go to work.